Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Greg Olson. I'm Director of the New York State Office for Aging. Glad that you could join us today. November, for those of you that may not know, is National Caregiver Awareness Month. So we're going to be talking a lot about caregivers today, but we're going to do a little bit more granular dive into what that actually means. Normally what we do is kind of more of a fireside chat format, but today we're going to get into a little bit more depth of some of the resources and platforms and partners that we have been working with to really provide some tangible resources for you as caregivers or somebody that might know somebody who could utilize this to get the supports that you need. Caregivers are an integral part of providing health services and healthcare follow-up, long-term services and supports to individuals of all ages that might need some help staying home or to get up on a daily basis. There's been a lot of data and a lot of studies on who caregivers are, what they do, and the impact of their contributions. New York is going to be undertaking a couple really large initiatives. One called the Master Plan on Aging, which Governor Hochul announced earlier on this year, and has just signed an executive order establishing a master plan on aging, as well as a reimagined long-term care task force. And frankly, you can't have any dialogue about healthcare, long-term care, social services without including the critical role that families, friends, and neighbors play in providing support to a loved one. Further, the president recently released the National Raise Family Caregiver Recommendations, which contained over 300 recommendations to encourage more attention and more supports for caregiving families and kin care families, grandparents taking care of grandkids or other family members taking care of somebody. And we do a lot in New York on this issue with many, many partners. And I have three extraordinary partners with me here today that can better frame the issues, talk about some of the resources that we have to support caregivers in their roles, not only today, but into the future. So I'm really pleased to be joined today by Becky Prevey, who's the Executive Director of the Association on Aging in New York State, Lita Rosenthal, who's the Director for Growth for Trualta, and Alex Drain, who's co-founder and CEO of Archangel. So thank you so much for joining me today. We've been doing a lot of work together, a lot of great work that's receiving a lot of national attention because of how unique it is, our partnerships and our focus across the board. So first of all, Becky, let me start with you. Just briefly tell us a little bit about what the Association on Aging in New York State does.
So at the Association on Aging, we support and provide technical assistance and advocacy on behalf of the 59 offices for the aging throughout the state. Obviously, we work really closely with the New York State Office for the Aging, and we're just thrilled at the partnership that's really laser focused on caregiving and how important it is, not only for all of our offices for the aging that support caregivers, but also for the general population, because as you speak to, Greg, individuals live within family units, so caregiving touches the entire life spectrum, and it's a really important topic that we're very excited to talk about today.
Yeah, and I think that between you and me, I've probably used the word caregiver 7 times already. So let's back this up a little bit, because that's an industry term, right? If there are people who are working who consider themselves caregivers, and they absolutely are. But when we're talking for this today, what is a caregiver, and what are some examples of the tasks that they perform?
Sure. And I think what's really interesting and why this is so important is that 55% of individuals who are caregivers don't identify as caregivers. So it's really important to put some content around what that actual phrase means. So we look at caregivers as exactly what you spoke to, Greg: family, friends, neighbors who do a variety of different tasks. And the reason people don't self-identify, and we hear this all the time, so say you're providing transportation for a parent or a brother or a sister. That's caregiving. You're providing a service on behalf of that individual. But when we talk to people doing those types of tasks, we hear, well, that's my dad. That's what I'm supposed to do. Or I'm a good neighbor. So people aren't recognizing that they're doing caregiving duties, and caregiving can range the spectrum from picking up groceries, helping pay bills, all the way to hands-on care of actually helping someone maybe go to the bathroom or take a shower, and then everything in between. Caregiving can be done remotely. So we have caregivers for people that live in New York that might live in the state of California, it's still just as stressful trying to provide coordination of medical appointments or bill paying services, or making sure, an individual has heat or fuel oil for that time of year. Those are all caregiving duties, but people don't recognize them in that sense. They think of caregivers as professionals, people that work in skilled nursing facilities, et cetera. And we're really trying to get to that caregiver that doesn't identify that they are a caregiver, so they've never touched any resources.
You're right. And in New York, we have over 4 million people that are providing those tasks every day. And, funny story, I was talking about our collective work together with an executive from another state agency in New York State. And when we were on the phone, it was a Zoom call. This individual was in their car, and I said, "Oh, is this a bad time?" And he said, "No, I was transporting my wife to a medical appointment." And I said, "Well, that's interesting you were doing that. That's exactly what I wanted to talk about." And this person didn't consider themselves as a caregiver. So that's really what we're trying to get at here. So for those of you that are listening, this isn't about paid care. This is about the millions of individuals that are providing uncompensated care, everything from mowing along lawns, shoveling snow, right on to hands-on care, bill paying, financial support, transportation, shopping assistance, meal preparation, and everything in between. So Lita, we got connected to you guys earlier on in the year, and it's been an outstanding partnership. Before I ask you, and I appreciate both you and Alex answering this question and sharing your story, because it's one thing to talk about it, but it's another thing to put it into context of real life. So before I ask you what TruAlta does, share your story, because you now do this for a living, and I think your experience has a lot to do with that.
Happy to share more, Greg. Like so many folks working in the caregiving space, it is really near and dear to my heart, which is what makes this work so important. When I started my caregiving journey, I was a college student. I was actually in Madison County, New York. So I was a long distance caregiver. I was a young caregiver as well. So to Becky's point, this identity of who a caregiver is, it comes in so many shapes and sizes. And because I was a remote caregiver, it wasn't 24 hours of care. It was, how do I help my mom? How do I help my family transition to this journey with her Alzheimer's diagnosis? So at the time, it was a ton of Googling. There weren't incredible resources like Archangels. I wasn't aware of New York Connects at the time. I didn't know what an area agency on aging was. And TruAlta didn't exist yet. So we'll talk more about that, of course, but really just throughout the journey, it's an entire range of care that you offer. So I started out with my mom. It was a lot of repetition, wandering. There were so many times my mom ended up in a cop car with our dogs, and that's normal. That is what caregiving is like. And now I toilet and bathe my mom. We have a wonderful, team of family caregivers, but it is often a team sport, and so much goes into that identity. So it's such an important conversation, and thrilled to be here today.
Yeah, and you mentioned something really important is, and we'll talk about this a little later, you're a full-time employee and you have those responsibilities as well. So we're talking about everybody that fits into this category, those who might be retired, taking care of a spouse, or not working, taking care of a younger disabled child, but a lot of individuals are holding down full-time or part-time jobs while doing this as well. So before we get in deeply into TruAlta, because we really want to show folks what's available to them, just tell us a little bit about TruAlta.
Yeah, happy to. So TruAlta is a training platform for the family caregiver. So it's not for a skilled nurse. Becky shared, it's not a professional caregiver. You're doing really technical things. So it's anyone, whether you're caring for an adult child with developmental disabilities, kinship caregivers, so grandparents caring for grandchildren, adults caring for a spouse who might have Alzheimer's, dementia, be discharging back from the hospital, stroke. So really, this is for absolutely every single type of caregiver in New York. There's wellness content on there as well. So it's all accessible 24/7 on any device. And the idea is that it's there just in time when you need it. So if you're up at 2 a.m. wondering, am I doing enough? Could I be doing this better? Which so many caregivers are. You go onto TruAlta and you find answers quickly when you need them. And it's all skills-based. So it's not just general information. It really will teach you how to provide best care possible.
Yeah, I'm excited. We're going to get a little deeper dive in a second. And, you know, another great partnership we have is with Alex and Sarah at Archangels. And Alex, similarly, you also have a story.
Yeah, I just start by saying it. I love you guys. I mean, New York, we travel the country talking about this, and New York is extraordinary in what you're doing. You really are. So thank you for serving as an example for other states, because I think this is it's not nonpartisan, it's not bipartisan, it's all partisan. And the impact of being an unpaid caregiver is huge. So just very quickly, my story is actually kind of weird. The way we got into unpaid caregiving was through data. My last company had gathered over 1 billion data points about what's really driving health. And top of that list was being an unpaid caregiver. But the vast majority of people had no idea that they were in this role to the discussion we're having. So fast forward to Archangels, let me just give you a quick personal story of someone who I just heard the story the other day. We were working with them to give a big presentation to a room full of folks like us, right? Folks who are working to make the world a better place, many of them paid caregivers. And she was explaining to me, well, I myself am not an unpaid caregiver. And I was like, okay, well, tell me about your life. And something came up, but the next day she was closing on a house. And she said, well, you know, actually my brother died in February of this year. And he had glioblastoma. He'd been sick for 4 years. His wife, she died in November of last year, and it was a pulmonary embolism, most likely caused by the stress of being an unpaid caregiver. And so tomorrow we're closing on this house for the children of this, you know, her brother. She's like, I'm just incredibly stressed out. I'm like, you are an unpaid caregiver. She's like, no, I'm not. I'm like, yes, you are. Like, you're the embodiment of it. It's your paid job. It's what you do. And it's what you are so deeply in the middle of. And yet even this health professional who was coming to a conference to talk about unpaid caregiving did not realize she was an unpaid caregiver. So I think that is the story of our collective lives, and why there is nothing I would rather do all day, every day than be finding these beautiful individuals who are serving as the backbone of our country, not getting paid, but they're doing the work that is keeping this economy running, period, end of story, and they're not getting support unless they're living in some place like New York, and getting access to kind of the resources that exist, but also the campaigns to find and love on this population.
Yeah, agreed. So tell us a little bit about Archangels.
So that is really, you know, Archangels has 4 main components, which is we are hustlers for data. And we have done in the last 2 years 4 studies, 3 with the CDC and 1 with the Journal of Affective Disorders. It's really legitimizing for states, for the government overall, but also for employers who we need to get involved in these activities. The presence and magnitude of this issue. 43% of adults are serving in this role. So what Archangels works to do is find a lot of data. I'll give you 2 other data points that people love to hear. Unpaid caregivers, because of all this intensity, they turn to substances to cope. Unpaid caregivers, as of COVID, we are increasing our use of alcohol and drugs at 5 times the rate of everyone else. And you know, that's just a reality of when you're stressed out, that's what you do. Well, what if you can't do that? Because to your point, Lita, you got to get up at 2 o'clock in the morning and care for somebody. Well, then we might cope with food. And sometimes I do this very well. Actually, I cope with both. And so using this data to help people feel not alone, but also to help validate their reality. So we run these campaigns that can be cheeky, very serious. They're very inclusive. They don't use the term caregiver, to help someone have what we call that aha moment, like, oh my God, that's me, like I just described for the woman we were having this conversation with. And then we get their intensity, that's the term that we use, validated. So you have language, oh my God, I am this thing, I'm in the green, yellow, or red. And then that's where our work sort of passes off to this beautiful team to say, all right, well, my issue is caregiving related family disagreements and no time for me. Well, what resources exist to help me with that the state of New York has made available to everybody, right? Or the employer might have hidden on the employers under the employee assistance program. And so we work collaboratively with this beautiful team to get individuals crosswalked over to those resources. And then the last and as important point back to that data is all that data is available. So if we know the intensity of the state of New York, that's a beauty. And we know that people who are in the red, 90% have at least 1 mental health impact. Well, that's making it hard to work, right? That's making it hard to cope. That's going to have top and bottom line impact on the state. people need more access to resources. We need more funding. So we roll up all that data and get it right on back to Greg, Becky, the team, so that data can be used to drive legislative action.
Yeah, that's great. Now, Becky, Alex talked about the CDC Archangel studies. Outside of those a couple of data points that you provided, what other data really stood out from you during the pandemic in terms of why we should be focusing on this population? And it has nothing to do with the pandemic. This was an issue prior to, but I think the data that has been cited is really a aha moment for anybody that's not working in this area, and really a call for action.
Yeah, and I mean, there's so much there as far as the data points are concerned, but I think really the takeaways that I've tried to use with the network, and I think have really highlighted what this issue is number one, the number of people that don't self-identify. So if you don't self-identify, we can't get you resources. Over half of caregivers don't do that. So I think that is issue number one. But I think what was really, really telling to us, especially with the CDC data and then with the data we've already gotten from the state of New York, is the real impact of what this means on day-to-day life of individuals. So Alex talked about the suicidal ideation rate. Take that a step further, and they looked at double duty caregivers, so caring for an older individual plus trying to raise children plus being in the workforce. 85% of double duty caregivers reported at least one mental health issue. 52% reported suicidal ideation. That to me is just astounding. This isn't someone that's dealing with some stress and might need some coping mechanisms. It's to the point of people thinking, I don't want to wake up tomorrow morning. So I think that is kind of the stark reality. I think the other thing that we're looking at, especially in working caregivers, and why we want to support them so significantly, is that 90% of HR departments that were surveyed said we want to do a better job, but we don't know how to do it. And I use the example frequently when I talk to individuals. It's very easy to go to an employee assistance program and say, I am in a domestic violence relationship, or I have an alcohol and substance abuse issue. There's this toolkit that EAPs can use. We don't have the same thing for a working caregiver. That's what we're building. That's what we're trying to disseminate. And I think that's really important. I think the other thing that was really telling is that through COVID, 10% of caregivers left the workforce entirely. We're already dealing with a workforce shortage. So when you tie in not having caregiving supports, that can be an economic driver to push people out of that realm. I think the other, really important piece is that 1 in 6 employees are a caregiver. And I know within all of our departments and the work we've done, we know working caregivers, and we know that they're taking phone calls at the office. They're leaving early, they're coming in late. And so that's something that we really tried to look at. We know about 70% of caregivers that were surveyed had to change their work schedule in some way, shape, or form. So it's a really, really big footprint in the employer community. And I think the other thing I just wanted to highlight, and there's so much data, I don't want to leave anything out. So Alex, jump in if you want to, but the economic cost to the state, if they had to pay for unvalidated, unpaid for care, is over $32 billion a year. So to Alex's point, we're trying to harness all this data to show the state of New York and also the nation that caregivers are giving back billions upon billions of dollars to their communities each year. And we need to make sure we continue an investment to support those caregivers, both paid, unpaid, working, and non-working.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I would add a couple quick points, because I think, Becky, let's go to that HR example. First of all, people who run HR are one of the most beautiful examples of double duty caregivers, because they are responsible for and caring deeply about the health of their employees. And that is a lot of intensity during COVID, for example. And the type of person who goes into working in healthcare and or working in HR is often disproportionately an unpaid caregiver. So if 43% of adults are, we know more than heads of HR are. So they're in this role themselves. They're often not aware of it, which is one of the most interesting things we hear, as I know you've seen. I would also say, if anyone's listening with the lens of an employer and worrying, but if I do this and I get my employees to figure out that they're unpaid caregivers, or my workers, whatever it might be, are they going to want to quit? No, unpaid caregivers do not want to quit their job. They want to stay in their job. Work is respite. They just need support so that they can. And in a care economy, which everyone would agree we're in right now, there is no better worker than somebody who understands how to care, who has experienced this firsthand. I don't care if you work in healthcare, automotive, retail, banking, finance. it doesn't matter. Unpaid caregivers at close to half the population, there is an applicability for everyone. You want these folks to stay working with you. And the last one, Becky, you just talked about the global cost to a state. For an individual, it's $7,000 a year out of pocket before inflation. So that was about 4 months ago. The number of unpaid caregivers swaying to us right now, like gas, food, that's $7,000. What is it now? $10,000? And this is on the back of an individual who was already unpaid. So I think that you cannot emphasize enough. We got to love on these folks fiercely. They can't afford to leave their job, and they don't want to leave their job because they're getting respite there and they already have this other job that is vital to our economy.
Right, and I think the goal today is 3 simple words, right? Educate, support, and connect. So we have to educate businesses that this is going on within their employees. And I'm going to ask Roger to put into the chat, and I want to thank the New York State Department of Labor for their partnership, where we created a New York State Employer's Guide to Caregivers, which provides, again, a lot of information. This costs businesses over $70 billion a year in lost productivity, turnover, hiring, people leaving the workforce, et cetera. And the data that Becky talked about, HR departments want to do something, not sure what to do. Here's the guide. If you are associated with any business, take the guide and share it with them. Then it's the support. So we're going to walk through in a second the Tralta app and Archangels and what we're providing here in New York State. And then it's to connect to the thousands of resources that we already have in New York State that people don't know about, because 55% consider themselves spouses, sons, and daughters, and don't use the term we keep using all day long here, which is caregiving. So let's shift gears, Lita. How do New Yorkers access your platform, and what are they going to see?
Happy to share more there, Greg. So caregivers access the platform by going to newyork-caregivers.com. For viewers, I'll also put up a little QR code so they can see that. But once they're in the portal, they're going to be getting access to all types of different training. So there is training that's broken up by specific conditions. So whether it's Alzheimer's, dementia, actually go back a couple of slides. So Alzheimer's, aging, intellectual development, mental disabilities, stroke, diabetes, Parkinson's, heart health, COPD, all of this content is available, and it's made really, really accessible in 5-minute pieces. We target a grade 5 reading level so that it is accessible for everyone. And it's in audio, video, e-learning. If folks want to come along, I can show you what it actually looks like in real time and how those can be accessed. So,
and I just want to point out, Lita, that what you've responded to is the way that caregivers want the information. They want it in bite-sized written pieces, audio pieces, or visual. So I just want to thank you guys for really responding to what the market is looking for. Yeah,
absolutely. That's exactly right. And I think when it comes to caregivers, it's about meeting them where they're at with just-in-time learning. And 88% of our caregivers report they are more confident after using the training. And 84% say they use a skill on an active daily basis that they learn on our platform. So once they've identified that they're a caregiver, which we know is a challenge that Alex and everyone here is working to address, they then have to say, all right, I need support, which is an additional step on top of that. And then actually engaging with the content is another journey. So we are laser focused on how can we make that easy. And one of the ways that we do that is having it that caregivers can just sign up. We don't ask too many questions. So they sign up, share kind of what brought them to the platform. Takes less than 2 minutes to get access. Folks do need an email address and create a password.
And while you're plugging that in, I want to let everybody know there is no charge for this. It's part of our partnership and our budget this year, thanks to Governor Hochul. We are providing this free of charge for any of the 4 plus million caregivers in New York State.
That's right, Greg. Totally free of charge. And the other thing that's important to emphasize is this works on absolutely any device. So if you have a cell phone, an iPad, a library computer, you're going to be able to get access to the content that way. So it really is designed to be easy to use, and you don't need super high-speed internet. It's going to work well on a phone. And another interesting insight there actually is that a lot of our caregivers prefer to listen along because they're doing other things. They have 5 minutes between lunch, they're driving to a doctor's appointment. So there are multiple modalities for that reason. And once you get into the portal, so I know that one thing that drives a lot of challenges for caregivers are family disagreements and caregiver wellness. So particularly during Family Caregiver Month, which is this month and why we're all here today, caregivers are focused on wellness and taking care of themselves. So that is something that is featured. And within that section, caregivers are able to engage with tips to prevent burnout. Because when they get to Trulta, we know from the Caregiver Intensity Index that Alex is going to share, they are burned out. There's content to balance work and caregiving, which is another big theme for those caregivers. Sibling disagreements. Caring can be a team sport. So as a caregiver, how do you help to support your family? And even if that sometimes means saying, hey, I need to take the reins, we're doing things okay. So within that content, it's all really brief. So you see 5 minutes right here. It's not going to take too much time at all as a caregiver. And if you prefer to listen along, you have the ability, so you hit play.
Sibling conflict and caregiving roles.
And it plays.
Really, I'm glad you pulled this one up, because I think, you know, what we see on television of how the family unit functions, especially around the holidays, right? Everybody's smiling, they're arm in arm. It's great. And the reality is that there's a lot of families with a lot of internal conflict and dysfunction. And so I'm glad you selected this, because that's a reality for a lot of families and not what you see on TV all the time.
Greg, I literally wrote down, caregiving can be a team sport or a massive fight, right? And thank you for highlighting this and for the tips you give people. How can you love your family again, especially to your point, Greg, during the holidays, which is rife with potential for disaster. And you could live in that, or you can help put that to something that's more positive. Great example.
Yeah, absolutely. And if there's something specific you're looking for, you're able to type it in. Or through this learning library, it's going to easily guide you to all of the other resources. So documents and decision making. That's another important piece of caregiving. You're caring for someone else. How do you help them to make those important decisions that impact their care? You can also search by diagnosis, by specific behaviors. So whether it's agitation, anxiety, boredom, irritability. And then within the content, there are tons of different ways. If you prefer to listen along, that's an option as well. So there is a video content component. So really the goal is to meet caregivers exactly where they are. And what's so cool in New York, caregivers have watched 450 lessons in just the past 2 weeks. So a huge uptick with Family Caregiver Month. And together, just in the past 5 months since we launched in June, over 6,000 pieces of content have been watched.
That is outstanding.
Yeah, it's incredible. And especially because when you think about the skills training, if caregivers just use one skill on a daily basis, and that's something like toileting a loved one that can be incredibly stressful, you're doing it 5 times a day, but that's just the one skill they learned, that can make a huge impact on their burnout, on their long-term care journey. So it's so important. And then within the platform, the last thing I'll share is you can get access to the New York resources as well, which I think will be a great transition for Alex. So under support services, where is it? I will type it in. Oh, it is not filtering. There we go. So under local resources, we get access to New York Connects, as well as the Caregiver Intensity Index. So this incredible ecosystem New York's built is all accessible.
So we're going to be going through the Caregiver Intensity Index. For those of you that don't know, our office, in partnership with 4 other state agencies, operate New York Connects, and we get a quarterly data dump from 5 really large agencies on all the community-based resources available to you that is searchable on the database. And all of the providers have been vetted so that they're a trusted source to go to. But that's what the New York Connects resource directory is. So Alex, let's shift gears. And Lita, thank you. It's an amazing tool. I'm hoping that the increase in usage is because we're reaching more people, not that people are getting ready to go see whoever they're going to see in a week and a half for Thanksgiving. But either way, that's great news, and love the format and the way you guys really dissected the content the way people want it. So Alex, Caregiver Intensity Index. I remember when I first saw it. I love it. Show us what it is. And similar to TruAlta, this is available to all New Yorkers, but what it actually is trying to measure and why.
Greg, I can run through the deck that puts that in the context of Any Care Counts New York on a broader level, or just go right into the intensity index. What would you guys rather?
Yeah, why don't you go through the intensity index? Then I want to go back to Becky, and then we'll go through the data that both of you guys have generated to this point through our multiple partnership.
Okay, so I'll use this moment to tell my personal story. And what I would ask everybody to do, and I think we can put this into the chat, and I'll bring up a QR code as well. So folks can just go ahead and grab their own intensity right now. Let me share that screen with you. And I think we can also put it into the chat. So everyone take a second and use your QR code to grab this. And remember, keep in mind, 43% of us are in this role. We just don't realize we are. And a huge percentage of us are actually having the pretty significant impact because of it. And I'd also argue, like, the reason why we use the term archangel and not caregiver is because we think of this in a very aspirational way. We think employers should be fighting with each other for who gets to hire the most unpaid caregivers, because unpaid caregivers know how to get things done under short periods of time. They do extraordinary amounts of work. They've developed incredible skill sets. So if everyone's got that, hopefully they do, and we can stick it in the chat. I'm going to switch over here, and I'm going to go ahead and get my own score, and you guys will hear my story as I do, and you can be filling out your own score at the same time. This is the tool that was used in those 3 CDC studies that Becky was referencing that provide that data that is really validating for CFOs who are deciding, should I invest in this? But really for individuals like myself who maybe don't have the words to articulate what's going on and why. And if I can't articulate it and don't know I'm in that position, I can't make use of the stuff that Lita just went through, which I would really, 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 really like to make use of. So we're sort of that first component of it. So I'm going to click here and get my score. Am I caring for a relative or friend who's 18 years or older? Any care counts? I am. I'm caring in multiple situations. You talked earlier, Becky, about the term sandwich generation. So 23% of adults are caring for elders and caring for youngers at the same time. We hear from folks all the time. We think about intergenerational caregiving, right? And it's kin care, as you mentioned, Greg. It's not just that I'm caring for a mama or a papa or a brother or a sister or a partner. It's a neighbor, right? It is a coworker, and this stuff impacts us. So am I caring for someone? I am in multiple situations. Yes, I am. And again, to that point Becky made, we're talking about things like personal needs, household chairs. Am I just looking across the window to my neighbor's house to see if they're, turning off their light at night and opening their shades in the morning? And if they're not, I'm ready to jump into action. That's an example of caregiving. So yes, I am. Am I caring for a child or teenager under the age of 18? I was actually joking. Becky is, we say, if you're in the red, you need a red phone. Becky's my red phone a number of times. I have children right now. And if anyone wants to hang around later and give me advice about 15 and 17, I'm in. The situation with the person or people I provide care for can be unpredictable or unstable. So I have a beloved dad who's 81, was in a very unstable position, is now in a really, really, really good place. But I have another person that we're providing primary caregiver support for, who for a number of reasons, addiction issues, just lost their house reasons. We are very on edge right now, looking to do the best we can to provide care in a daily basis that is changing the situation. And that, so I strongly agree on that one. again, hopefully you're doing this for yourself as well. I don't know what to expect, so it's hard to plan ahead. I've been giving a lot of talks, doing a lot of traveling, and I have to say to everybody, I might not be able to be there because if something flares, if there's an event, I need to prioritize caring for my family. And this is what unpaid caregivers do, right? You can't not care. So this is very true for me right now. I've had to cut down on my own expenses because I help pay for things for the person or people I provide care for. Let's think about that $7,000 figure we just talked about. For me personally, I'm okay right now in my own family situation. I'm working, my honey's working, but this other family member that I'm talking about, they lost their house. So to give you a sense of that financial impact, strongly agree. I think this is funny, not funny. I guess we would call this gallows humor. We have knockdown, drag out fights, and I think we're learning to do a better job at that. So I'm going to give myself an agree, not a strongly agree. But there have been times in my life where I want to be like, insert swear word, strength, agree, because I'm falling off the edge of the spectrum. We have disagreements, but people are not spending enough time with the person or people I'm providing care to. Greg, back to that holiday thing. Who's picking up who? Who's staying with who? Who's sleeping with who? Who's providing what? This is a very big issue in my family situation. I wouldn't say I feel underprepared for most situations I encounter as a caregiver because I'm very lucky. I have access to Alta. I have access to NY Connects. I have access to coworkers who understand this. So I'm going to go neutral because I wouldn't say I don't. I always feel I should be doing more. Show me a caregiver and I'll show you someone who always feels they can be doing more in this role. I wouldn't say I have more to do than I can handle, but I wouldn't say I don't. And I am very famous for saying lots of swears in short amounts of time. That is a way I release stress and anxiety in these moments where I'm like, I just can't possibly get this all done. I can't be a good mama, a good coworker, a good daughter, a good partner. Something is going to break. And I do feel very supported by friends, neighbors, or families. This is incredibly important. All those CDC studies, the number one most important way to reduce that intensity you're feeling is by having someone you can turn to. So as you're listening, think about this not just for yourself and how you're doing, but remember, keep an eye out for those other 43% of adults out there who are in this role and could really use even a, you're doing awesome, I see you, thank you for what you're doing. That goes a really, really, really long way. Having someone to turn to for support when things are difficult, keeping an eye out on someone, filling their fridge, being proactive, all those tasks that Becky listed through. Really important that, individuals are, that I as a caregiver have someone to do that for, and that I'm also looking out for others. Am I confident in my ability to navigate the health insurance benefits of the person or people I'm caring for? This is the number one most hysterical question ever. We have executives of health insurance companies who, when it comes down to their own situation, admit, I have no freaking idea what I'm doing. Do I know how to manage the financial situation of the person or people I'm caring for? I don't. And again, this is my full-time job. So any of you out there, it's not your full-time job. You are not alone in not knowing how to handle that. But I do feel that I'm doing a good thing. It does fill me up, and that is also protective. I think I'm learning to cope with the situation. I think I'm becoming confident. That notion of self-efficacy, again, what are the resources that exist? Knowing that I can go to NY Connects, knowing that I can go to my employer, knowing that I have True-Alta. This builds up that concept. We call it self-efficacy. Stupid word, not a very effective word for, I just have confidence that I can handle something, and that's protective. Completely limited my ability to spend time doing the things I take pleasure in. I actually had a friend say to me on my birthday, you're not really a good friend right now, Alex. So happy birthday, but like, where have you been? And I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like, let me tell you quickly what's been going on. Like, I don't have time to be a friend right now, and I'm so sorry. And of course, then this friend was like, oh my gosh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I didn't know. Why didn't you ask for help? Hi, I'm a caregiver. Can you help me? Said absolutely nobody ever. Like, we don't. That's not what we do. We just survive. I don't have as much personal freedom as I would like. I would not say I feel depressed, but again, remember that number, 70% of folks in this role, anxiety, depression, and or suicidal ideation. But I am so stressed out that the other day, my daughter pointed out for me that I have clumps of hair coming out. Literally, I was like getting out of the shower, combing my hair, and I was like, oh my God, like clumps of hair, gross. Sorry for the visual, but stress does manifest in your body. I do sometimes feel manipulated by the person or people I'm providing care for. I do sometimes resent what I have to do. I personally am working full-time for pay. It has caused me to miss more work than normal right now. I wouldn't say I'm less productive at work because this is my work and you guys are all my work with me today. So thank you for making me not be less productive. And I get incredible flexibility. So This is a really vital thing. If you're an employer or if you work for an employer and you're thinking about how to support, go to your employer and talk about how do we support the folks who are in this role by giving them flexibility. They don't want to quit, help them not quit. And they are incredibly effective employees, by the way. And I do get support in my job. So let's finish. Let's see how I'm doing. No thanks, just bring me to my score. I could create a profile if I want to. Calculating your score, doing nothing probably feels like a break. And we're guessing you could use one. So I'm a 63, 29% of us right now are in the red. I'm in the red, right? I use this language with my family when my honey's like, hey, let's go have fun. And I feel like stabbing him. He's learned to say over time when I'm like, I'm just, I don't want to do this and you're making me cranky. He's like, I think you're in the red. Because I am in the red a lot. So it gives me a quick, we call it the horoscope. Tell me more about me so I can feel less alone. But then I can get support right away. You know your score, you know what's making things feel more intense, see what we can do to help. You can connect right over. But we also break it up for you. So for me personally, these are my responses. The things that are making everything feel more intense is I don't have any time for myself and navigating money and benefits for others. So if what I need in this moment is help to decrease intensity, I go to one of those. But what if I want to, sometimes I'm in the mood to like do more of what I'm good at. So I feel like I have someone in my corner. How can I do that even better? I do feel supported at work. What other resources exist? So let's click over, for example, to no time for me. I'll click over to that resource and it's going to take me to the Archangel's resources that are close to me. But it's also going to take me to, let me go back to the New York one. I think I have the other link. If this was for Any Care Counts New York, it would take me to, I'll pull this up and show it to you when we come back. It would actually have taken me to the resources that are specifically available for New York, meaning it would start with NY Connects. It would point out to me Travolta. And then would also let me look by state. So I can find those AAAs that Becky's talking about, to find those offices for the aging that NYSOFA is supporting, so that I can get to those resources that are specific for me. So I'll call that up through the link for New York specifically while Greg, you carry on.
Yeah, and I think, well, I thank you for that, Alex, for going through that. And I think, what everybody is just seeing here is that whether it's New York or other states, there are so many resources out there and you can't find them. So what you saw here is a direct connect between Travolta, Caregiver Intensity Index, Association on Aging, and NYSOPA. So if you reach out to one of the four, you're going to be connected to the other three. And that's the whole point, because there are resources out there. So as we expected prior to going live here, we are running through time rather quickly. So Roger, I'm going to ask you to pull up Lita's data to show what we've seen so far in terms of the usage. But while we're doing that, Becky, can you talk about the direct and indirect supports that your members provide day in, day out? So these are two really good starting points, but we got a whole state and a network out there that can provide services. And what are the types of things that they can provide?
So I'm going to go quickly because of the time constraint, but I think what's really important to note is that a lot of times people don't come to the Aging Services Network until there's a crisis, right? When you're in a crisis, it's very hard to think directionally, and it's very hard to process information or take steps that you need to take. That's what our network is here for. And no matter where you are in New York State, you have an Office for the Aging as a resource, and that Office for the Aging does a variety of different things. We're most well known for our home delivered meal program. So the home delivered meal program is the largest in the nation, but that's just one tiny part of our full book of business. So we have congregate meal programs, we have nutrition counseling and education, we have over 800 senior centers throughout the state. We provide 41 of the highest level evidence-based interventions. So what that means in layman's term is if you have a chronic disease, we have chronic disease self-management classes to teach you how to handle those issues. We provide respite services. So if you are a caregiver and you need a break, we can provide support for that. We have social adult day programs. So if you are a working caregiver and someone needs supervision, you can enroll them in a social adult day program. We provide hands-on personal care, which is one of our services that's very well utilized and we know keeps people out of skilled nursing facilities. That's hands-on care. So that is bathing, toileting, dressing, etc. But we also do grocery shopping, meal preparation, those types of assistance programs for people that aren't eligible for Medicaid. So a lot of caregivers think I'm not eligible for any services because mom, dad, or myself make too much money. It's not true. Reach out to that local resource. We have state certified case managers. Really, really important program. And I think, you know, Alex talked about this in the Caregiver Intensity Index. Health insurance counseling is extremely important for caregivers. And the reason I say go to your local office for the aging is because we're mandated under law to provide objective information. If you're getting information on a Medicare Advantage plan from a commissioned sales representative, they don't always have your best interest in mind when they're putting you into a plan. Our certified health insurance counselors will find the appropriate plan for you on your behalf. Saves tons of money for individuals, also provides them access to different medical services that they may not think they're eligible for. We provide transportation services. Again, throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, we kept people alive on dialysis or getting cancer treatments. We run the long-term care ombudsman program. So if you're a caregiver with a loved one in a skilled nursing facility, we can provide advocacy on your behalf. We do a ton of work on social isolation and loneliness, which could take up a whole nother Facebook Live. But these are all things that are available within your community. And then lastly, what we talked about so far is the New York Connects program. New York Connects is birth to death. You can call that phone number if you need help finding childcare, or if you have someone under the age of 18 with a disability and you don't know how to access services, all the way to I need to put my mom in a skilled nursing facility. And the reason I really want to focus people to reach out to their local AAA is that this is very difficult work to try and do on your own. I will tell you from past experience, I used to run a AAA. I had an employee that had worked there for 25 years. Her dad had a medical crisis and she came in my office saying, I don't know what to do to get him where he needs to be. She'd done this work for decades. So you need to really look at caregiving in that sense, that when you're in a caregiving role, I don't care how educated you are or how many resources you have available, it's overwhelming and you need help through that journey. And that's what all of our offices for the aging are there to do for you, for your family members. And having resources now that we've included for Any Care Counts New York through Alex and through Lita just gives us additional tools within that toolbox to assist people.
Yeah, thanks. And so the, I just want to undo alphabet soup, but AAA is a office for aging at the local level. And you don't have to remember all the programs and services. You just have to know that's the first place to start because they will know what those things are, as well as the New York Connects database. So Roger, let's pull up Lita's slide. Sorry to do this to you, Lita. I'm going to give you 3 minutes. Give us a high level overview, and then we'll talk a little bit about Any Care Counts New York campaign.
Lita, you're on mute.
Yeah, we'll wait for Roger to pull up your deck too.
Perfect. I can also get it pulled up there, Greg, if that's easier.
All I know is I can't do it, so whoever can do it.
Here.
I'll just chime
There we
in.
go.
I don't have the deck. I think Lita has it. Thanks, Lita.
Oh, there you go.
There we go. So when you think about caregiver and the care recipient, both of those individuals are super important when it comes to an effective intervention. So Tralta is evidence-based, and we focus first and primarily on the caregiver themselves. So with the skills training and skills-based training, it's all about improving confidence and building the skills so that they can effectively manage care, which can help drive down several of those different drivers and buffers in the intensity index. So 88% of caregivers say using Tralta helped them to feel more confident. So that confidence, it really is perception is reality. If you wake up and you feel confident, you are going to learn new skills. You are going to approach things readily and effectively. 56% of caregivers after using Tralta do more self-care. I've got 3 minutes, but I'll show a little bit. Wellness content is really popular, especially after the past few weeks. 12% reduction after using Tralta in just 12 days. Caregivers see their stress level go down. And for the care recipient, that leads to delayed facility placement and improved chronic condition management. So 75% of caregivers on Tralta report keeping their loved one at home for longer because of the system. 56% say that it's helped them to reduce ED visits. And there's a 12% decrease in the severity of behavioral symptoms, which can be really, really challenging for children, for adults across the lifespan. So in New York, we've touched 59 of 62 counties, which really speaks to the accessibility. It doesn't matter where you are, you can get access any time of day. And over 6,000 pieces of content have been viewed, 428 in the past 7 days. So folks are really active. The holidays are coming, Greg, like you say. And that's an average of 7.5 lessons per caregiver. There's a couple of different skills in each lesson, but if we think of that as just 7.5 new skills, new tools that each of these caregivers has in their toolkit, that is powerful and really shows that 85% are using these skills they learned. So that's 6,000 new skills that are being executed in New York right now and helping to provide this better care. And the last thing I'll say is that in this time period, caregiver wellness content has been absolutely critical. So it's our most popular content. Similarly, the documents and decision-making. So those financial drivers that you've mentioned, Alex, and understanding how to navigate this complex landscape is really important content that's also on True-Alta. And the New York State resources, which is New York Connects, which is the Caregiver Intensity Index, are also really, really popular. So it is one story, all 4 of us here today. It's so exciting to be able to offer this for free to New Yorkers.
I think it's great because I'm a big fan of data. I know all of us are. And, we didn't develop this partnership with you because it was fun and nice. We developed it with you because we know it works and it's needed, and your data shows that. Let's flip over to you, Alex and Becky. Let's briefly, because we only got a couple of minutes, just quickly define what Any Care Counts New York is. And it's unfortunate to say we did not do this first because we like to do things first, but we did it second, and hopefully we're doing it better, or at least equally as well. But let's talk about what the Any Care Counts campaign is and some of the data that we've gotten so far.
So let me do 2 things, and then Becky, I think you'll do a great job sort of bringing us home. So let me show you, I actually just did not press. So if I go back to where I just was, right? So I am in the red, as we just saw. So the very first place I come to get support, if you click connect to resources, that's where I'm coming. Resources in the state of New York. So I can connect to True-Alta, just press right there. I can collect over to NY Connects, and it's giving me an overview. If I want to read the overview of what it is, it's going to give it to me. Or I can click over to Archangels and see what those Archangels resources are. I want to also show you really quickly that data. So if you look at, we went live 16 days ago, and it's a soft launch. So we're just getting started. In 16 days, 1,500 caregivers have been exposed. They've had this aha moment. Oh my gosh, this is me. And they've been able to get their intensity. 27% of those caregivers are in the red. And just to give you a sense for what that means, if you're in the red, over 90% have at least one mental health impact. So these are the folks that we need to be getting to, right? We always say, if you're in the red, you need the red phone. So if we go back to, if you clicked on those resources, that could be your red phone. A AAA is a red phone. True-Alta is a red phone, right? If you look at the detail that goes down below, all right, well, what's driving that intensity? Right now, neck and neck in the state of New York, because I've got no time for myself and I'm feeling stressed out or depressed. And again, we'll be able to track over time how these things change. Well, what's helping me is feeling a sense of purpose. That's one of the things when we talk about self-efficacy, helping somebody feel confident. We also try and point out to somebody, what you're doing is amazing, right? You are incredible. Thank you for what you're doing. Sometimes that's the first and most important line of care. And then for folks navigating money and benefits for others and doing this well is something that's helping. But I want to show you a different viewpoint, which is, what if I, as an employer, roll this out? Well, then I get my own intensity dashboard. I get to look for my own company at what's going on. I can click on this through site. So we will find, for example, this particular employer, 24%, 25% are in the red, but there's one of their sites where 12% are in the red. Why? Because they have a very active leader who speaks openly about their own story as an unpaid caregiver that is helping to not just normalize, but celebrate this. And more people are then getting connected to those resources that exist that they wouldn't know about. And another component of Any Care Counts New York, which is vital for everybody who's on this call, and thank you again to Greg for your support in doing this, is when we get intensity across the state of New York to showcase things like 27% in 16 days from a soft launch of the 1,500 caregivers we found already are in the red, and here's what's driving and here's what's alleviating it. This is a way to drive the allocation of additional resources to, again, this vital backbone of our country that is not getting the support that we want. So I'll stop sharing. And Becky, if you want me to call up anything else from the other deck, I know time is tight, but I do have those other visuals we talked about before, if it makes sense.
Go ahead, Greg.
Good.
I think, you did a great job kind of wrapping up what Any Care Counts New York is. And what I would say, from the lens that I have here at the association, not only supporting the aging network, but also being exposed to caregivers every single day in every single sector of government, we needed a way to not only highlight caregiving, give resources, but the work that I do with the legislature on advocacy is data driven. So this process has really shown not only how important this is, especially with the CDC publications, but also where the investments need to happen in the state of New York. And when we reference that $32 billion in cost savings for unpaid caregivers, that I can use to leverage to say to state and federal government, we need additional resources to provide additional respite, et cetera. But I think, the number one goal of this entire process is in identifying individuals that don't self-identify and getting them tools and resources that can support them, because every individual wants to age in place in homes and communities, and family members need tools to be able to do that.
Yep, and I just want to do a shout out to the Ralph C. Wilson Jr. Foundation for putting some financial support along with ours and yours as well. It's been a fantastic partnership. Becky, Alex, Lita, I can't thank you enough for what you do, for all of us coming together to try to really make a positive impact. I think that
Greg, can I show one more thing quickly?
Sure.
I'm just going to show this really fast because to that point, right? If you look at Any Care Counts New York, it is really big shout out to Ralph C. Wilson Jr. Foundation. But I also want to say in that kudos, look at this, right? So there's the federal RAISE recommendation presented to Congress, and then there was a RAISE Act state policy roadmap. And look at New York's effort highlighted as a best-in-class example of a public-private partnership that is understanding that if you don't, what was the words that you said? Educate, support, connect. If you're not finding these unpaid caregivers, it doesn't matter what you build, you're not doing anything. So this holistic approach to really getting these individuals, getting them validated, getting them navigated over to support is a extraordinary example of what is possible when you take that comprehensive approach.
Agreed. So here's our ask, and Roger's going to put these links into the chat. So we want you to do a couple of things. Number one, if you work anywhere, share the business guide to caregiving with your HR department and your leadership. We have a survey that we are collecting from working and non-working caregivers alike to get a better group. But we've had a lot of responses, but we want to keep going because we really want to know from every angle in every corner of the state what issues people are dealing with. How often are they caring? Who are they caring for? Share the caregiver intensity index so we can continue to get data about that intensity from New York State. Share the True Alta app, which is again free for everybody, that provides these resources and connections that all of us are part of. And then we have a couple of other things that we're working on. We're working on the launch of a video for businesses for people to easily self-identify as caregivers, about a 10-minute video and other things as well. This is really, really important. We should be talking about this every month, not just November. To Alex, Lita's, and Becky's point, if any of this resonates with you directly or somebody that you know, it's because you're not alone. There's 4 million of us out there just in New York State alone. So again, Becky, Alex, Lita, I want to thank you so much for joining me. This is really exciting. I love seeing the data and the progress in a very short amount of time. Roger, as always, thanks for the behind the scenes and making this work. Please join us. Our next episode is going to be with my good friend and colleague, Beth Bovine from the Alzheimer's Centers of Excellence at the Albany Medical Center. And we're going to be talking tools and tips in dealing with and hanging out with over the holidays individuals with cognitive impairment and Alzheimer's disease, which is really going to be spectacular. So again, thanks everybody for being here. Have a great holiday and we'll see you back in a couple of weeks.
Thank you, guys.
Everyone.
Right, we're done.
It still says recording.